as many people know, have noticed, and are rightly concerned about, and many people are complaining about, you cannot get anywhere these days with the media by truthful rebuttal. In other words, I concede the pointlessness of this continuation of an attempt to warn. It will be ignored, lied about, changed into irrationals, and spat back as malicious and untruthful allegations about my person. But the stakes are very high, and what I've been warning people about is very serious. One of the reasons we have so many sandbaggers, people who covered for and knew about the AIDS attack, is because of Paul McCartney's manipulation of media studio presentation of things that should have been questioned and disallowed towards and about me. I'll put through a couple of examples. He made up lewd and ridiculous stories. He was claiming I did love King Crimson. There was no question I did. I have a painting I did of them. I still have trouble breaking my connectivity to their music. So I did a painting of when I saw them. Relatively popular, 1,000 people accessed it. Someone suggested I put it in a gallery, might even buy it. So when a girl who was beautiful came on to me, I felt she was probably with the culture who had enhanced me so much. A European at the college who had come to be interested in me the way a woman expressed interest about my painting. I fell in love with her. This was turned into, by McCartney, a sickening little show about his justification for the AIDS attack, which he slyly claims he found a script about. Without even having to look at the script, he was already with his machine to do something. So he obviously was in on the writing of the machine and the letters, which were postdoctoral innuendos from in the pen hand of a 12-year-old girl from Israel. And they started on me. They attacked me and deafened me when I was 9, 10, 11 years old. I was going through life deaf, horrified, blanked out. The only thing I could relate to was King Crimson. And I've since learned that they were behind the attack. It was their experiment. But they have gotten away with denying that. Here, I'll show you something that's very interesting about this in a minute. If in fact I can find it. I had it here just a few minutes ago. What I'll do is, while I continue to talk, is look for and print another copy of it. But one of the things that they claimed was that they were the basic issue of what they're up to is that they targeted me for extermination as an example of what they claimed justified the extermination. And they convinced people who they poisoned that it was an entertainment sport because of something that they manufactured, comparing me and my abilities to John Lennon, who was represented as having been killed by the partnership script of Gail Burstyn. That's complicated wizardry. I think you realize that if you were normal, you would realize that an 11-year-old who's been battered and deafened in a Pittsburgh public school is going to have much luck trying to understand that. Because, I mean, you're, what, a 50, 60-year-old adult, and you're challenged even to the degree of being able to rewind and hear what I said, much less admit that you have no comprehension of it. So what they were saying was they lured me to Mount Desert Island because I was sexually occupied about a girl named Leslie Katz, an Israeli partner of the girl who wrote the letters, and who, in fact, the letters were factually about the dating game surrounding this valedictorian Jewish girl who Robert Fripp had quite a hard-on for. He sold me down the river and lied to me about it. And meanwhile, they were saying things to me in writing like, I love you, man. Okay, this is the piece of paper I wanted to show you. So being that I was sincere about them and I loved them, it didn't seem to me far-fetched. I had some self-respect. I really did like them. Didn't seem to me that far-fetched that they would be returning some favor. And I knew that people had slyly slipped articles saying things like, you give rock a bad name. I knew that Pittsburgh was telling King Crimson, he's given you a bad name, you know. But I did not yet believe that they had it in for me. And they were saying things like, I love you, man, to me. So I had reason. I wasn't just inventing the idea that they liked me. Okay. They were inventing the idea, which is a really sickening thing to have to contemplate. Now, if you look at the evidence, ultimately you come to the conclusion that I'm right about what happened. So it's really a question of looking at the evidence. And it's very complicated. It is postdoctoral. There were people who were Attica State psychiatrists on the staff of this, what they represented as romantic letters from a 12-year-old to a battered, deaf 11-year-old boy who they were making sport of. And they said, oh, they were taking the will to power out of me by supplying attack prostitutes. And they made pimp movies to sell of this. They basically created a Venus flytrap. Now they say that I deserve that I went looking for it, and that they did it to protect someone else. Well, it's not just not true, it's factually or logically to the way that it progressed. Now, Pitt arrested me on October 17, 1993, when I went to an appointment that they set up simply to cancel it for defiant trespass. This is normal behavior for them. The idea of law was at the law school, right? My father had been senior faculty. For mysterious reasons, the University of Pittsburgh made it impossible for me to get my tuition remission. They said they lost my father's contract, but they supplied my father's tuition remission to his adopted daughter years later. So, I mean, this is normal conduct for them, to lie to somebody, to torture somebody, to humiliate somebody. They used the nerve agent on me. You would think that they would look at the evidence before they judged it. And they didn't. They said that they don't have to look at it because they already know from what I say that it can't possibly be true. And that was in the days when I had only had only the script, which claimed John Lennon was dead, which I now know had been put together by him and his friends for this ghastly operation. So how is it disproven, you're asking? You're going back 2 minutes to my claim that it's disproven. How is this disproven? How is it disproven? How is it? You're like George Galloway denying something he said in perfect closed captions. So what was it? Because what they did was they terrorized and confused and used a neurological implant to mess up the mind. And then they said God is concocting within you anything that you want to say, you must tell us. They said wear your inside out. It was Zionist neuropsychiatry. And they advertised it. They admitted on the front page of the newspaper that they were pioneers in neurohypnosis. So the hypnosis involves the power of suggestion. Well, they don't want anybody to realize what happened. They car bombed Mackenzie Shirella with the same techniques. And they just did it to make me look dangerous because of what she was led to use to do. And I'm defending her because it's my nature to be truthful, chivalric. When I see one of my peers, which not a single peer has ever returned the favor to me, ever, because of King Crimson. So you're asking yourself, going back now 3 or 4 minutes, how is it logically disproven, Curry? I asked you that so many times. I was thinking about that. I'm not going to forget that you said it was logically disproven. Well, the person who invited me to Maine was Will Zell. The only reason I was interested in Will Zell was because he was in the Gurdjieff Society. He's the last person in the world that any girl who I know or would ever have anything to do with. Last person in the world. I'd hitchhiked from Pittsburgh to St. Louis to see this hotshot from King Crimson. Okay. And he was promoting the Gurdjieff Society. And Will Zell said, I'm in this Gurdjieff Society. Why don't you come up to Maine? Last person in the world. I was living in a tent. What does that have to do with looking for the pussy? It has nothing in the world whatsoever to do with it. But they were playing a war game, and I realized that at some point, decided to investigate it. And they said, see, he was just, the girl had needle tracks and a tattoo of the Grim Reaper pointing at her vagina. And if anybody should be saying, see, it's me. Because I testified in a lie detector state police barracks room that Will Zell Brum in the Poconos Mountains, and before AIDS had happened, was known, had said to me, what would you think of a scheme to transform the human race by injecting the blood? And there was a witness turned, what's that? And I remember perfectly clearly. That's what he said. I wasn't that deaf at the time. And here he is working for Jackson Immunogenetic Laboratories on a Venus flytrap, the alibi of which is being written by Penis Gabriel and Yoko Ono, who made pornographic genocide movies with me as a mark man. They're these Christian weirdos who believe that, it's the work of Jesus to exterminate, supporting what the Zionists are doing in Gaza. Now, this is like a postage stamp. I very literally could only say bits and pieces of the script. But one of the things I've shown people a lot, I haven't shown people this very much. One of the things I've shown people a lot has been where she says Nabucco's stupid code about what boys should do and girls should do, and calls Thursday a day two, which implies wed first. Get it? The stupid code, wed first. and she has something about broken signs. And the whole thing is a word game called Two Virgins Pussy Ball, which John Lennon named one of his records after. And if you look at this, what you can see is she says, "Go to sleep," and she puts an oblique stroke through go to, which is Midori's name. It's a signifier. I'll show you another. I can't. I don't know if I can find the papers. I'll have to print them again. Like I just printed that. I don't know what I did with them. I just put them away and I put them in a bad place. My short-term memory is a little bit off. Oh, I remember where they are. I put them in this super special place for my academic excellence stuff. I'll be right back. I'll show you a clip where they use the oblique stroke in semiotic communication, okay? Because I'm working all the time on indexing, finding their index, and showing how they created a super story in international media for the execution of a fascist explanation for the AIDS attack, which is what they did. Now this is from a movie. You can find it by going by the assistant director, whose name I've lost track of what the movie was called, but it's about one of the gangs in London, I believe, and they walk down one of these types of gangs, you know, that the Beatles were mixed up in with Oswald Mosley, the street ruffian gangs. Mick Jagger glorifies with street fighting man, and they're walking down the alley, goose stepping. Boom, boom, boom. That's what this movie is from. You can find out what it's called. Something like The Lords or something. But if you look up Carter de Haven. But I'll show you. Now, this is going to be a little confusing because I've run out of money. I had to use a very bad printer. So you notice there's two black lines, right? Like horizontal black lines. Those are from the printer. What I want to call your attention to is the chalk mark on the wall, okay, which signifies cinema. It's, the names have been changed to protect the innocent. It's a fiction, not to be resembling anything real. It's a symbol of Hollywood's license. The people who are killed in this movie aren't actually killed, is what it's supposed to say. And notice a much bolder white line is starting to come out from the left side of the screen. And as she walks, that down in front of the chalk mark, that white line becomes even more pronounced. They've used this semiotic in magazines about killing Martin Luther King, which I have and can easily show you. And what it is, it's a snuff film signifier. It means that these people were working on snuff films. And one of them was named in the letters about the war game Two Virgins Pussy Ball, who worked with Alfred Hitchcock on North by Northwest. His name was George Romero. He was my neighbor. He made Night of the Living Dead. His daughter Kyra is mentioned in the letters about poisoning me and torturing me. So what they did was really clever. This is where it gets clever. The stuff about the Lennon pulled a Houdini isn't very clever. It's very clear that they just did it as a Pentagon Disney mechanism because it's there, because they could get away with it. They pulled it. But this is really very clever. They made Midori Goto look like the target so she could leap into Reagan's arms and say, Yoko Ono thinks they're trying to target me. So, because Goto's sleep is like Z's, like Goto, but I'll kill you, right? But she was there. She cast herself as the victim, just as Reagan did. These people who wrote these letters, he worked with them. It's perfectly obvious he worked with them. Everybody knows that Peter Gabriel wrote the alibi. And Paul McCartney was saying all of this stuff about Jimmy after the pussy was Reagan defending himself, coming from the attorneys who had me in D.C. the day he claims he was shot. He comes out and waves to me the night before, and they give me a pretzel logic brochure that says there's no such thing as objective reality, only what the jury believes. So what's tricky isn't what they did. It's perfectly clear. They spell it out and brag about it and say, give me 5. There's no way that you'll ever get anyone to admit that they understand that, because there are no adults in the room. There are no adults in the room. I'll give you another example. They talk about constructing a persona of me because they did this as a snuff movie. They want to make a movie about me after I'm dead. Okay, and they did the whole thing with the assistance of JNC's government. The murderers in the state of Washington have justified this, facilitated this, and battered any attempt to warn anybody about it, tortured me, poisoned me. They're really creepy, crazy, hostile, stupid people. Really, it's true. Okay, so when you see Diamanda Gallas with a stiletto outside the World Trade Center, they say, no, you don't see that. Okay, Cliff Robertson went in a private plane above the World Trade Center on 9/11. You don't know that. No, you do not know that. Okay, so who was he? He starred in PT 109 as JFK. And he starred in the premiere episode of The Outer Limits. We now take control of your television set, which was postponed for Kennedy's state funeral. The Outer Limits was about the Warren Commission. And Dan Rather, you can see in the history, the only person to see, took over CBS by reporting what he claimed was in the Zapruder film. He goes, the president's head goes violently forwards. That's what you'd rather believe. There's no such thing as objective reality, only what the jury believes. Anybody can look up the Zapruder film. Kennedy's head goes violently backwards. They argue why did that happen, how did that happen, and so forth. But there's no mistaking it. His head goes violently backwards. There's no mistaking it. Dan Rather, in the history, on November 24th, 1963, reported the president's head can be seen to go violently forward. The opposite of the truth. The whole thing that they're pulling is the opposite of the truth. It comes from the Oppo world. It's not really all that clever. John Lennon didn't die because of my negligence. He tortured me as revenge for his Japanese favorite. It's an Anglo-Asian project. That's what pragmatism will now take custody of your tonsils, and you will admit that you don't understand a word of that, and you will be returned to your righteous place as representatives of the worst in an increasingly feudal society, serving what they have strange names for, but meaning the super money bags in a handful of little cloisters like Moscow and Berlin. You don't care what's true. Just go ahead. Go back to your imaginary world where Reagan didn't know, where John Lennon, where Yoko Ono is a fiend, torturing and murdering innocent people for pleasure and entertainment in the name of Zionists at the FBI who were behind the script. And all of those sandbaggers who cannot say the name. Gail Burstyn, and lets it to terrorize me with the fact that she's armed and at large and ready to avenge Joe Biden against a nuisance who they bitterly assassinated and cruelly mutilated and molested. That's the truth of it.